This is the new BMW 5 Series, the long wheelbase, because that's what BMW thinks Indians want. More space, more comfort. But does it stay true to what the 5 Series is all about? To find out, we've assembled every single generation of the 5 Series to be sold in India. Welcome to Evo India, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up and stay subscribed to the channel. Okay, so what do we have here? Obviously, the G68, the new long wheelbase 5 Series. Now, India is the first country in the world to get the long wheelbase right-hand drive 5 Series. Up until now, it was only available in left-hand drive because this was made for China, and China is a left-hand drive country. And turns out, hate all you want, but Indian taste and Chinese taste are very similar. We like all this gold and bling, and we want more space at the expense of, we'll come to that in a bit. Now, to put the G68 into a right perspective, we've got all the other generations of the 5 Series that was sold in India. It started off with the 5th generation 5 Series, the E60, then the F10, and then the G30. How does the G68 compare with these? That's what we're going to find out in this special edition of Gone But Not Forgotten. Now, the 5 Series is not gone. It's definitely not forgotten. But what are our memories of the 5 Series? Why do we love the 5 Series so much? I remember with the E60, that was the first 5 Series that I actually tested. I fell absolutely in love with the 5 Series. Can the G68 hook me on? Let's find out. With every other generation of the 5 Series, I started in the driver's seat and I ended in the driver's seat because the driver's seat is where all the action was at. But with the new 5 Series, the action is at the back. This is where BMW have put in all their time, energy and money to liberate acres of space. So the wheelbase 130 longer than the G30, and that means you get a serious amount of space. This is what, 10 inches, 8 inches? So lot of knee room. You can tuck in your toes under the front seats, so you get that space. And this seat is adjusted to Lenny's driving position. If I'm sitting on the left side, I can slide the front passenger seat all the way in front and get even more space. In fact, the wheelbase of this long wheelbase 5 Series is even longer than the new long wheelbase E-Class, the main rival for the 5 Series. So that is what the 5 Series has to tackle. In terms of space, they've done it. Second is ride comfort. Now, these high-profile reddish tan tires, they do a fantastic job of primary bump absorption. Also, the suspension has been tuned for comfort, and this really delivers excellent ride comfort. To be driven around here in the city, on the highway, this really is excellent. It corsets you, it really is luxurious. But there are some things that are missing. First things first, there are no sunshades. In fact, all the other generations of the 5 Series have sunblinds, but this one doesn't have a sunblind. Neither for the side windows nor for the windscreen. Now, that is a big miss. You do get a massive panoramic sunroof, and plus point for BMW, you can open and close the sunroof via a touch button at the back. You don't have to tell your driver to open and close it. So that is a nice touch. You don't get rear seat screens. You do get an aftermarket accessory where you can plug in your iPad, but you don't get screens. And the seats, they don't even have a seat pocket, which looks strangely incomplete. Though the Bowers and Wilkins sound system, now that is a really nice banging sound system. So there are a few minuses out here. Also, if you're sitting on the left side, you can't adjust the front passenger seat on your own. You don't have those so-called boss mode controls, so you have to tell your driver to lean across and slide the front seat ahead. So these are small things that the E-Class does it without fail, does it really well. These are things that the 5 Series should have had. These are big misses. But you do get these pillows for your head, so that is a nice touch. So that is the back seat of the 5 Series. Lots of space, extremely comfortable. Does it drive like a 5 Series? Let's find out. What's your favorite looking 5 Series? Let us know in the comments. I'm going to start with the E60. Now, this was one of the last of the Bangle-era 5 Series with that very controversial styling. Bangle butt and this headlamps which just evoked so much of criticism. Yet, it put BMW on this path towards doing out there designs that people actually love. Buyers actually loved it. And over the years, this actually still looks so distinctive, so unique, still so desirable. And I must point out, look at the kidney grills. These were functional elements. It needed to let air go to cool the engine, and this is all the cooling that it needed. And that's why the kidneys were proportionate. They were nice, small, they were actually well done. And if you compare these kidney grills to the latest 5 Series kidney grills, just look how large they've become. And most of it is also blanked out because the engine doesn't even need that much cooling. Now, considering where BMW kidney grills have gone off late, this looks okay. This doesn't look too ginormous. But when you compare it to the E60 and this, my God, this is massive. Now, from the E60, we then got the F10, which toned things down. The Corona rings, that became even more prominent because this was the era of LED DRLs. You had these eyebrows. The kidneys became slightly bigger, but they were better style. And to me, this is the nicest looking 5 Series. Understated, yet really muscular, especially with the M Sport pack on it. The M5 of this generation, I loved that car. Now the F10 evolved into the G30, which got lots of chrome. Now this was the luxury pack, luxury line which was called back then, lots of chrome. The kidney grills got extended sideways, got integrated into the headlamps. The Corona rings, that gave way to whatever this thing was called. To me, not really that great looking, but obviously it looked like a 5 Series. And this has evolved into more in your face, more gold accenting, more blingy. What do you think of the new 5 Series? How does it compare with all the other generations? Let us know in the comments. The E60 5 Series is where I started my television career, my video presenting career. So this goes back, what, 16, 17 years. Overdrive, the magazine that I grew up with, I was working for, that got bought over by the Network 18 conglomerate, and they had CNBC TV 18. And those days, CNBC was the only channel to have a dedicated auto show that was run by Autocar. And I remember in the first meeting within a week of being acquired with the Network 18 big bosses, they came on and told us that Sapna mat dekho, you guys aren't going to be on television. We already have a very good TV show. And that was that. And then a week later, they came back to us, the same guys, and they said, okay guys, you all are going to be on television. And that was that. We had zero clue how to present on television. We were print journalists. In fact, we weren't even trained print journalists. I did my mechanical engineering and just lucked out and got into Overdrive writing about cars. We did not know how to present and all of that. But we obviously had to set a mark. We had to establish ourselves. And of course, we wanted to establish that thrill of driving. Those days, that term thrill of driving, it did not exist. That is what Evo is all about. But those days, Overdrive was also all about the thrill of driving. So we wanted to do a fun episode where we did a lot of driving, a lot of action. And so we came up on this idea to do a 5 Series versus E-Class versus A6 versus Volvo S80 comparison test. We drove from Chennai to Pondicherry and back to Chennai, and at Chennai, we hit the racetrack. I remember taking Shireen Ban on a lap of the Chennai track in the 525D. Those days we had the 525D, the 530D had yet to come, and I went sliding around. The 5 Series, it always had a dedicated ESP off button, DTC off. All the generations had it, apart from the new one. New one, you can't switch off ESP, and that is just so against the ethos of the 5 Series. The 5 Series also had the manual handbrake, and I remember BMW engineers telling me them retaining the manual handbrake was because BMWs were for drivers. Today, I don't know what they're doing. They're doing cars for the backseat guys. So anyway, I'll talk about that when I get into the new car. But with this 5 Series, switch off ESP, it had enough torque and you could slide it around and you could have so much fun. I remember taking Shirin on that lap, and one place I spun it around and I carried on as if that was like part of the whole demo. And then there is that closing of that overdrive show. Shireen resting on the bonnet of the A6, and I come from behind, sliding that black 5 Series, spinning it around, the rear tires billowing out smoke. Such an iconic shot. And that really hooked us on to the 5 Series, made us lifelong fans of the 5 Series because it catered to the driver. At the expense of the backseat passengers, yes, I understand this was a bit too firm, the steering a bit too heavy. This was too focused on delivering driving thrills and enjoyment. And that is what we are all about, aren't we? We guys, we're always sitting here in the driver's seat. So sometimes our opinions are skewed against comfort, against backseat usability. But this 5 Series, we loved it, India loved it. Within a year or 2 years, the 5 Series started to outsell the E-Class. The E-Class of that time was very staid, a little fuddy-duddy. The A6 also was nothing that exciting. All got big engines, 6-cylinder engines, unlike today where everything gets 4-cylinder engines. So when the 530D came, whoa, this raised the stakes in terms of performance. 232 bhp, but more importantly, 500 Newton meters of torque. That meant 0 to 100 in 6.8 seconds. 250 kmph top speed. This is a 15-16-year-old car, and even today it still moves. Even today it is such a fun car to drive. Today you'll get a decent E60 for what, 6-7 lakh rupees. What other new car do you get for that kind of money? And for that 6-7 lakh rupees, obviously you get an old car, but as long as you've got a good car which has been taken care of, you get something that's quick. Put your foot down. Even today, this diesel engine, it pulls, there's performance, the steering is so good. This was hydraulically assisted, electrically adjustable. Back in those days, electrically adjustable steering, but hydraulic assist, so feelsome, a little heavy, and that's where lots of those complaints came that the steering is a bit too heavy, the suspension is too stiff, run flat tires, it just added to those nightmares. In fact, if you swapped from run flats to regular tires, the E60, it just improves dramatically. Then the seating position, you sit nice and low within the car. It's such a sporty driving position, everything envelops around you. Even today, it is such a nice car to drive, and this established the benchmark for everything that we've known and loved about the 5 Series for generation after generation. You go down the corner, you can push it hard, you can send it, it grips, it holds, the bite from the front end is so good, the feedback is so nice, so crisp. And if you recall, this generation of the 5 Series got the V10 engine in the M5. What an icon that was. And of course, the hero image of that M5 filtered down to the rest of the range. The 5 Series, it accounted for 50% of all BMW's profits. And in India, it took BMW to the #1 spot in the luxury car market. With the F10, BMW took a massive generational step forward with the 5 Series, adopting a lot of the learnings and also components from the 7 Series. So the front and rear suspension were taken from the 7 Series. The design of the interior as well as the exterior was inspired by the 7 Series. In fact, the design was heavily toned down compared to the Bangle-era 5 Series. And we criticized the styling, saying that, oh, it's too soft and what have BMW done? But now, with the benefit of hindsight, I must say that the F10 is the nicest looking of all the 5 Series generations. The right amount of muscle, the right amount of understatedness, and also the right amount of luxury. So in terms of luxury, the big change was the steering. This moved from hydraulic to electric power steering, and that made it much lighter, also far more maneuverable, easier to drive in the city. The interiors, the design, the features, the quality of the materials, the soft touch plastics, the quality of the leather, this thick rimmed M steering wheel, the new design for the gear lever, the new design for the iDrive, also the updated iDrive system, everything really nice. And of course, the suspension. This became a little softer. So it wasn't as sharp as the E60, but the benefit of the softer suspension was that when you were going around a corner, mid-corner bumps wouldn't throw you out of line. So it would hold on to its line better. So that meant in the real world, on real world conditions with bumps and all of that, the 5 Series was a quicker car. Plus, the engines also got upgraded. This is the 530D, 242 bhp, 530 Newton meters of torque. It shaved a couple of tenths off the 0 to 100 time, 250 kmph limited top speed. It also got paddle shifters now. So that one thing that was lacking on the E60, that also got sorted out, and overall just so much nicer. If I had to buy, or if I were in the market to buy an old 5 Series, the F10 would be my first pick, then the E60, and F10 with the 530D engine. If you got a 535i, that twin turbo 6-cylinder engine, oh, that would be sweet as hell. These comfort and sport modes, that was also a new introduction on the 5 Series. So you got Sport, you got Sport Plus, and you had a proper ESP off button. Long press it and everything's off, and then you were on your own. You could slide it around, and with the kind of torque that was on offer with the 530D, oh, what a fun car. So easy to slide. Even the 520D, you could slide it around, but the 530D, this was a big boy car, and it could do really cool things. If you had car control, man, you could really dance this car around. I don't want to praise my car control and all that, but man, I've sent this car sideways all over the place. Obviously, you don't want to do it now. These are old cars. Their owners love their cars. They trust us at Evo to take care of their cars on Gone But Not Forgotten shoot. So we take utmost care of all the owner cars. So we're not going to do anything stupid with this, even if the owner insists. But this is lovely. Come on, man. This is lovely. I'm not going to mess this up. Okay, from F10, we now move to the G30, and we've got it in 520D spec. With the G30, the 5 Series started to share even more and more with the 7 Series, including the entire architecture. So the CLAR architecture, that was shared with the 7 Series, which used a lot of aluminum and a carbon core. And the benefit of that was a weight reduction, 100 kilos lighter than the earlier F10 5 Series. And that meant, together with the higher rating for the engines, this car became even faster. So the 530D, that bumped up torque to 620 Newton meters, which meant the 0 to 100 time went down to 5.7 seconds. In fact, the contemporary M5 was only 2 seconds faster to 100 kmph. The 530D was that quick. I'm driving the 520D, which still puts out 400 Newton meters of torque. So by this generation, the 520D was only 100 Newton meters down on the E60 generation. So even with the 520D, you could have fun, you could slide it around. This also retained the sport and comfort, plus Eco Pro and adaptive, and you got a proper hard button that you long press and it would switch off ESP. So you could really send it sideways if you wanted to. Plus, it got these nice paddle shifters. The steering, electric power steering, became even lighter. In fact, the damping became so much better than the F10. The BMW engineers, they said that this was the most comfortable 5 Series, and it was a fact. So it used adaptive dampers, not air suspension to keep the weight in check, but the adaptive dampers, those worked really well. So stick it into sport, it firmed up a bit, you could really gun it around corners, but keep it in comfort. And this felt like a proper E-Class rival. In terms of the comfort over long distances, this was actually on par with the E-Class. In fact, there was this war between Mercedes and BMW. Both thought that the grass was greener on the other side. So with the E-Class, Mercedes started to make it more and more sporty, and BMW with the 5 Series started to make their cars more and more comfortable. So the lines started to get converged until Mercedes, they made a radical departure and went to the long wheelbase E-Class. Now, the new 5 Series is not the only long wheelbase car that BMW ever brought down to India. With the F10 generation, they brought the 5 Series GT, which was that estate-ish car. Came in as a CBU, nobody liked it, didn't sell well. But then with this generation, they also bought the 6 Series GT. That was the long wheelbase with that estate-ish, SUV-ish, coupe-ish kind of back end. And that was a long wheelbase. The 6 Series GT and the 5 Series both sold side by side, and the aim was to outflank E-Class. So you have the regular 5 Series at one end, you have the 6 Series GT at one end, and then attack it from both sides. Didn't really work. The E-Class really sold, and that's why with the G68, BMW have gone completely to the long wheelbase 5 Series. This 5, we also called it the most gimmicky 5 Series. So it got this huge key, this big key, which you could also back up the car into your parking slots. It got gesture control. You didn't have to use the volume knob. The new 5 Series does not have gesture control because nobody really wanted it or used it. And if you were talking and moving your fingers, your 2-finger mode would switch your audio tracks, and it was very irritating. So all that is gone. But it just got so many more features. So a digital cluster, a bigger infotainment, nicer quality for the buttons. Thankfully, the climate control was still physical buttons. The iDrive, this again got the updated iDrive system, a bigger iDrive controller, nice black chrome. This car has got the luxury line pack, but it also had the M Sport pack, which had a little bit more sporty elements. But overall, the main takeaway was just how similar this was to the 7 Series, including the exterior styling. And of course, keeping with legislation, it got all those bings and bongs. But with this generation, you could adjust the volume of that bodong, 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 which you can't do in the new 5. The thing is, the 520D engine, it's not a 530D, but still, it just delivers such effortless performance. You actually do need that ding, 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 ding to remind you of what speeds you're doing. Because this 5 Series, it masks speeds so well. It just makes mile munching effortless. Maybe our government planners know what they're doing. With the new 5 Series, there is no 530D, not as of now. What we get is the 530 Li, and unlike in the past, where a 30 meant 3 liter, today 30 does not mean 3 liter. So what we get is a 2 liter turbocharged engine, puts out 254 bhp, 400 Newton meters of torque, and gets this up to 100 kmph in 6.5 seconds. So this is a big car, make no mistake about it. And this engine, it pulls the car along quite well. In fact, it also sounds really good. So you stick it in sport mode. Now, there is no proper sport mode button. I don't know what is the problem with having a proper sport button, but no, you have to go to my modes. Then you have to go through all this digital art, expressive, relax, click sport. Dynamic setting for pure driving pleasure. Then you look for the ESP off button, and you can keep looking because there is no ESP off on the 5 Series. All through the years, all through those generations, the one thing that was constant was a nice big ESP off button. So if you wanted to send it sideways, you could send it sideways, and the chassis, the car, it would always indulge you with your extreme driving. The new 5 Series does not indulge extreme driving. It doesn't want you to be doing silly things. It in fact thinks that everybody will be sitting at the back, a driver will be sitting up here, and there is no point letting the driver fool around. So you don't get an ESP off button. But the driver, when he is in the mood for it, he can really send this car. I'll switch off the blower so we can listen to it. And to switch off the blower, again, you have to go into these menus. There is not like one proper button. So now it's off, so it's quiet. And now you can listen to the engine. I'll slow down so that you can listen to the engine. I'll just put my mic at the speaker because it all comes in through the speaker. Doesn't that sound good? So all those sounds are piped in through the speakers. Outside it doesn't sound so sporty, but it's actually a nice note. And then when you put it in a regular mode, then it doesn't make so much sound. So I think it's nice. Okay, it's all fake, but it is a nice sort of fake and it does indulge you. You also get this boost paddle here. So you pull it and you get 10 seconds of primed performance. So within 10 seconds you step on it and you get full power, full torque, and you are in the lowest possible gear. So these are all 5 Series, these are all BMW elements, but you can't slide the car around, and the suspension, the dynamics, it is more tuned for comfort. Now you drive it at 810s, even 910s, and you will have zero problems with it. In fact, this is a smooth highway, but like any Indian highway, it is a bit wavy. It goes over these waves, these bumps really well. It does soak it in really nicely. But then when you hit like a bigger bump, which you then feel, that's when the body doesn't stay settled. So that's when it feels a little bit like a boat. I wouldn't say boat-like because that is disrespectful, but it does feel a little wavy, a little floaty. Go around a corner, aha, body roll, baby. You get lots of body roll. This is soft and yeah, you can feel the body roll. The steering is not as precise, nor is it as direct and responsive. And also, you do feel that weight transfer, both from side to side, and then you feel it squatting on that rear suspension, that soft rear suspension. When you chuck it into a corner, that immediacy of the front end is just not there. The body waits and then settles on the outside dampers. Does this feel like a 5 Series? No man, no. You can feel the added length in the wheelbase. This is not as agile, it's not as eager, it's not as responsive as any of those old 5 Series. I'm sorry to say this, but this is a fact. You throw it around a corner and she's not that happy. It all stays safe and secure, mind you, but it's not indulgent. And that's what the 5 Series always was. It was an indulgent car. It was a luxury car that would also indulge your hooligan side. That's gone. That's gone. And I'm sad. Okay, on that disappointing note, what else do you want to know about the 5 Series? Okay, the screen, excellent. 14.9 inches, 12.1 or 3 inches. Total edge to edge, it is some 30.1 inches. So this is a massive screen. Very clear. The menus are well organized. They arrange really well. But you don't get like physical controls for the aircon. So this temperature control is always there. It doesn't get hidden behind any menus. So that's nice. But you still have to take your eye off the road momentarily to adjust it. So you can't just do it sight unseen. The seats are very comfortable. The steering, this is not a shape. This is like a squircle. I don't know what this is, but it's nice, big, fat, meaty steering wheel, like all the M badged 5 Series, the M Sport 5 Series, not the proper M5 Series. Again, going around a corner. Oh. But I have to say, these Vredestein tires, they do have very good grip, and they squeal only at the absolute limit when the car just can't handle it anymore. So considering the right comfort these Vredestein tires offer, along with this handling, it's actually really good rubber. Made in India, mind you. The steering also extremely light. It's not that it is completely dead in feel. I must say that you can feel a bit through the steering wheel, but it is extremely light. Makes driving in the city very easy, I have to say that. But out here on the highway, it doesn't really indulge you. With this 5 Series, BMW have made an E-Class, which is, well, considering that 95% of all buyers in that segment want an E-Class, BMW making an E-Class is no bad thing. They're catering to the market. But BMW made the 5 Series, and the 5 Series stood for something. I don't know what this stands for. That's something that probably have to think a little bit more. Maybe the magazine story, by the time I sit down to write the story, I'll have assimilated my thoughts and I would be able to form some more coherent sentences. But right now, I'm conflicted. Because do I want a BMW E-Class? I don't know. I would buy a Mercedes E-Class, right? I loved the 5 Series because it was such a rewarding car to drive. It's not that rewarding to drive. It's not. It's very nice to drive. But then there are also many other very nice to drive cars. The outgoing long wheelbase E-Class is also a nice car to drive. So there are very nice cars to drive, like I said. Can't put my thoughts together. I'm so conflicted. But this is not a 5 Series. It doesn't feel like a 5 Series. It doesn't feel tight and eager and meaty. It doesn't have that meat and potatoes feel. This is like a nice salad, if that makes sense. The G68 5 Series has grown massively by 130 mm compared to the earlier 5 Series. So that is massive, long wheelbase obviously. When you compare it with the E60 5 Series, the first one that came to India, the new one is 215 mm longer in terms of wheelbase. Now I got my notes here because you can't remember so many figures. The F10 is 78 mm longer in terms of wheelbase compared to the E60. And then obviously you have the G30. Now the G30 did not grow all that much compared to the F10. In fact, that is only 7 mm longer in terms of the wheelbase. Now I have another interesting statistic. When the E60 came, that time the 7 Series, the E66 7 Series, that wheelbase, the long wheelbase 7 Series of that time was only 25 mm shorter in terms of wheelbase compared to the G68. So this long wheelbase 5 Series is almost as big as a 15-year-old 7 Series. And that's how much the 5 Series has grown. Tires were always a big talking point on the 5 Series. In fact, they were a bone of contention because the 5 Series came with run-flat tires. And 15, 16 years ago, India was just not ready for run-flat tires. Either in terms of acceptability, what, you can't repair your tire at a puncture wala, or even in terms of our road conditions. Okay, if you had a regular flat, then it would allow you to drive 80, 100 kilometers at a reduced speed and get somewhere. But if you had a cut sidewall, and that was a serious problem in India with our road conditions, which were actually worse than what it is today, or maybe the road conditions are equally worse even today. But if you had a sidewall cut, that means you were finished. You had to wait for a tow truck to take you out. And that's why some owners did put a spare wheel. It did not come with a spare wheel because it was designed for run-flat tires. So that negated the need of a spare wheel in Europe. Now the E60, it came with 245, 45, 18-inch tires. The F10, that also got 245/45 18-inch tires at the front, but the 530D, it got staggered tires, so it got wider tires. The rear was 275 the width. With the G30, again 245/45 18-inch tires, and 18 inches continue on the G68. But with one crucial, really important difference. These are non-run flat tires, and that shows how BMW have really adapted the 5 Series now for India and for the Indian requirements in terms of usability of the tires, in terms of the ability to handle Indian roads, and also comfort. So if you notice, from 45 profile, these Bredestein tires have gone up to 55 profile. So they are higher profile tires. Visually also you can make out the higher profile, and this delivers in terms of comfort. The comfort of the new 5 Series is just so much better than the earlier 5 Series is. We'll talk about comfort in a bit, as well as the handling. There's no question that the new 5 Series is hugely more spacious, hugely more comfortable, hugely more tech infused than the earlier 5 Series. In fact, you sit in the G30 just one generation prior and it feels so old on the inside compared to the new 5 Series. So in that respect, BMW have ticked all the right boxes. They've done their homework and they've delivered exactly what Indian customers want. You sit inside this and it's just such a nice place to be in. But that is not the only question that we're asking on this special episode of Gone But Not Forgotten. What we also want to know is that, does the 5 Series have that common DNA, that common thread that courses through the veins of all the earlier generations? And the honest answer is, you'll be hard pressed to find it. This now is properly focused at being a luxury car. Earlier, the 5 Series, it has won innumerable tests, much to the dismay of BMW's rivals. But at Evo, the 5 Series has always been our pick because it did driver enjoyment, it did sportness, while also taking care of the luxury aspect. But now, this is purely focused on backseat comfort, purely focused on luxury. It wants to do what the E-Class does, wants to take on the E-Class by doing exactly what the E-Class does. But to us, that leaves us slightly wanting. Sure, it does make nice sporty sounds through the speakers, and it does move quite well even for a 4-cylinder. But that sportiness, that ultimate sportiness, that ultimate driving machine that all 5 Series were, that aspect is slightly lacking on the G68.